One Day in the Sky, Act I. July 15, 1940. Luftwaffe airbase near Calais, France. The morning air smells of aviation fuel, hot metal, and coffee. Hans Richter walks across the tarmac toward his aircraft, a Messerschmitt Bf-109, its angular frame gleaming in early sunlight. He's 21 years old, tall, blonde, everything the Reich propaganda machine celebrates as ideal Germanic youth. He's been a fighter pilot for 8 months now. He has 3 confirmed kills. His squadron mates call him lucky. He doesn't feel lucky. He feels tired, nervous, aware that each mission might be his last. But he hides these feelings behind the mask every pilot wears, the casual confidence, the joking bravado, the pretense that death is something that happens to other people, never to you. His squadron is preparing for another sweep over England. The Battle of Britain is entering its critical phase. For weeks now, the Luftwaffe has been attacking British airfields, radar stations, ports, trying to achieve air superiority before the planned invasion. Operation Sea Lion, the conquest of Britain, depends entirely on controlling the skies. If German bombers can operate freely over England, if British fighters can be destroyed on the ground or in the air, then invasion becomes possible. If not, the English Channel remains an uncrossable barrier. Richter reaches his Messerschmitt, runs his hand along the fuselage. The metal is already warm from the sun. The aircraft bears his personal markings, a small eagle painted near the cockpit. Some pilots paint elaborate designs, count their kills with symbols, turn their fighters into canvases of ego and achievement. Richter keeps his markings minimal. The eagle is enough. A symbol of what he wants to be. Swift, deadly, free. His mechanic, Karl, a middle-aged man from Munich, is performing final checks. Karl has been maintaining aircraft since the Great War, knows more about engines than most engineers. He's saved Richter's life twice already, spotting problems that could have caused mechanical failure mid-flight. Richter trusts him completely. She's ready, her lieutenant, Karl says, wiping oil from his hands. Engine purring like a kitten. Full ammunition, full fuel. Bring her back in one piece, yes. Always do, Karl, Richter replies, forcing a smile. It's their ritual, the same exchange before every mission. Karl pretends Richter is invincible. Richter pretends to believe him. The briefing was simple, almost casual. Major Heller, their squadron commander, pointed at a map of southern England, indicated their target zone. Fighter sweep over Kent. We escort bombers hitting radar stations near Dover. Expect heavy resistance from RAF fighters. Spitfires and Hurricanes. They'll come up to defend. That's what we want. Shoot them down. Destroy them on the ground if possible. Make Britain defenseless. Standard tactics apply. Stay with your wingmen. Don't pursue damaged enemies too far. Save ammunition for confirmed kills. Questions? No one asked questions. They'd flown dozens of these missions. The tactics were routine, familiar, rehearsed until they became instinct. Take off, form up, cross the channel, escort bombers, engage British fighters, return home. Simple on paper. Deadly in practice. Richter climbs into his cockpit, settles into the seat, begins his pre-flight routine. Harness secured. Control surfaces checked. Instruments verified. Oxygen mask adjusted. Radio tested. Everything must be perfect. One mechanical failure, one overlooked detail, means death. The Messerschmitt is a magnificent machine, fast and maneuverable, armed with machine guns and cannon. But it's also unforgiving. Pilot error is fatal. Equipment failure is fatal. Bad luck is fatal. The engine roars to life, the propeller spinning into invisibility, the entire aircraft vibrating with contained power. Richter feels it through his body, the raw mechanical energy waiting to be unleashed. This moment, just before takeoff, always fills him with contradictory emotions. Fear and excitement. Dread and anticipation. He knows combat might kill him today. He also knows there's nowhere else he'd rather be. His wingman, Lieutenant Werner Koch, taxis alongside. Werner is 3 years older, more experienced, steadier in combat. They've flown together for months now, developed the intuitive coordination that keeps wingmen alive. Werner protects Richter's blind spots. Richter returns the favor. They trust each other absolutely, the kind of trust that only exists between men who faced death together repeatedly. The squadron forms up on the runway. 12 Messerschmitts, 12 young men, 12 fragile lives contained in metal and canvas and engineering. Major Heller leads from the front, his aircraft marked with elaborate kill markings, 23 confirmed victories painted in neat rows. He's an ace, a veteran, a survivor. Following him offers the best chance of becoming the same. The tower gives clearance. One by one, the fighters accelerate down the runway, lifting into blue sky, climbing steadily, forming up into practiced formations. Richter slots into position, Werner on his wing, other pairs surrounding them. The formation is beautiful, precise, deadly. They are the Luftwaffe, the most powerful air force in the world, masters of the sky, conquerors of Poland and France and Norway. Now they will conquer Britain. The channel appears beneath them, sunlight glittering on water. The distance is short, perhaps 30 kilometers from French coast to English shore. At cruising speed, it takes minutes to cross. But those minutes feel eternal, suspended between two worlds. Behind them, occupied France, German territory, safety. Ahead, enemy airspace, British fighters, anti-aircraft fire, danger. Richter watches the English coastline approach. White cliffs, green fields, tiny villages that from this altitude look peaceful, almost innocent. But he knows those villages contain radar stations, airfields, gun emplacements. The entire country is mobilized for war, preparing to resist invasion, determined to fight to the last. The bombers are already ahead, Heinkel He-111s in tight formation, their twin engines droning steadily. They're heading for a radar station near Dover, one of the installations that give British fighters early warning of German attacks. Destroy the radar, blind the defenders, gain critical advantage. The bombers will do the destroying. Richter's job is protecting them, engaging any British fighters that rise to intercept. Major Heller's voice crackles over the radio, calm and professional. Enemy fighters, 10 o'clock high. Spitfires. 6 of them. Prepare to engage. Richter's heart accelerates instantly, adrenaline flooding his system. He scans the sky, searching, and then he sees them. 6 British fighters diving from altitude, dropping toward the bomber formation like hawks attacking pigeons. They're fast, aggressive, closing rapidly. The battle is beginning. Blue section, break right and climb. Engage the Spitfires. Red section, stay with the bombers. Go, go, go. Richter pulls hard on the stick, his Messerschmitt banking sharply, climbing toward the British fighters. Werner stays with him perfectly, maintaining formation, covering his approach. The G-forces press him into his seat, making breathing difficult, vision narrowing. He fights through it, keeping his eyes on the enemy, judging distances, angles, speeds. The Spitfire closest to him is painted in standard RAF camouflage, green and brown, marked with roundels that look like targets. It's turning toward him, the pilot clearly seeing the threat, preparing to engage. This is the moment Richter has trained for, the moment when theory becomes reality, when academic knowledge transforms into life-or-death action. He centers the Spitfire in his gun sight, waits for optimal range. Too far and he wastes ammunition. Too close and he risks collision. The distance closes. 700 meters. 600. 500. Now. He squeezes the trigger. The Messerschmitt shudders as machine guns and cannon fire simultaneously, tracers arcing through space, converging on the target. The Spitfire brakes hard left, evading. Richter's burst misses, shells passing through empty air where the British fighter was a moment before. The Spitfire is already turning back, aggressive, attacking rather than fleeing. Its guns flash. Richter sees tracers coming toward him, pulls hard right, feels his aircraft shudder as bullets pass close, hears the sharp ping of impacts on his fuselage. He's hit. Not critically, the controls still respond, the engine still runs smoothly. But he's hit. The British pilot is good, experienced, dangerous. This won't be easy. The dogfight evolves into chaos. 12 German fighters, 6 British, all turning, diving, climbing, firing in a three-dimensional ballet of death. Aircraft cross paths separated by meters, by seconds. Collisions are avoided through instinct and luck. Tracers fill the sky, smoking lines marking trajectories that could mean life or death depending on infinitesimal variations in timing and positioning. Richter stays on the Spitfire's tail, matching its turns, trying to anticipate its movements. The British pilot is good, very good, constantly varying speed and direction, never presenting a stable target. They spiral downward together, locked in deadly embrace, each trying to position for the killing shot. Werner's voice cuts through the radio static. Hans, brake left now. Richter reacts instantly, trusting his wingman without question. He brakes hard left, just as another Spitfire flashes through the space he occupied a second before. Werner saved his life. Again. He'll owe Werner drinks after this mission. If they survive. The altitude is dropping dangerously low. They started at 4,000 meters. Now they're below 1,000, approaching the altitude where mistakes become unrecoverable. Pull up too late and you crash. Turn too sharply and you stall. The margin for error shrinks with every meter descended. The Spitfire he's chasing makes a mistake. Not a big mistake, just a slight miscalculation in a turn, a momentary hesitation. But it's enough. Richter sees the opening, reacts without conscious thought. He pulls the nose up slightly, leads the target, squeezes the trigger. His cannon shells walk across the Spitfire's wing, tearing metal, severing control cables, destroying structural integrity. The British fighter rolls uncontrollably, trailing smoke, diving toward the ground. Richter doesn't follow. He's too low already, needs to climb, needs to regain altitude and situational awareness. He pulls back on the stick, the Messerschmitt responding immediately, climbing away from danger. Below, the Spitfire crashes into a field, exploding on impact, flames and black smoke marking its grave. Richter feels nothing. No triumph, no guilt, no emotion at all. Just awareness that he survived another engagement, achieved another kill, added to the statistics that define his value as a pilot. The radio is chaos, multiple voices talking simultaneously. I'm hit, I'm hit. 2 more bandits, 6 o'clock. Where's my wingman? Brake right, Hans, no, the other Hans. The battle continues around him, invisible opponents fighting invisible enemies in three-dimensional space where confusion is constant and death is random. Richter climbs back toward the bombers, searching for Werner, needing to reform their pair. He spots his wingman 200 meters away, also climbing, also seeking. They converge, slide back into formation, 2 instead of 1, stronger together. The bombers have completed their run, are turning for home, their payload delivered. Black smoke rises from the radar station below, indicating successful hits. The mission objective is accomplished. Now comes the dangerous part, the withdrawal, the flight back across the channel while British fighters pursue, seeking revenge. Major Heller's voice, still calm despite the chaos. All aircraft, reform and return to base. Stay together. Watch for stragglers. The squadron consolidates, counting heads, assessing damage. They're missing 2 fighters. Either shot down or separated, damaged and limping home independently. The survivors form up loosely, maintaining enough cohesion for mutual protection while allowing damaged aircraft flexibility to manage their problems. Richter checks his fuel gauge. Sufficient for the return flight, but not abundant. The combat consumed fuel rapidly, full-throttle maneuvering burning through reserves. His ammunition is depleted, maybe 10% remaining. His aircraft shows minor damage, a few bullet holes in non-critical areas, nothing that threatens flight stability. They cross the channel, descending gradually, approaching the French coast. The tension eases slightly. They're out of immediate danger now, too far from England for British fighters to pursue effectively. The mission is essentially over. Survival is almost certain. Almost. Because war offers no guarantees. Mechanical failures occur without warning. Damaged aircraft succumb to cumulative stress. Pilots misjudge landings after the adrenaline fades and exhaustion sets in. Safety exists only after landing, after shutdown, after climbing from the cockpit and placing feet on solid ground. The airbase appears ahead, familiar and welcome. Richter lowers his landing gear, reduces speed, lines up his approach. Everything is routine, mechanical, practiced until it requires no conscious thought. The runway rushes up, wheels touch, the Messerschmitt rolls to a stop. Engine shutdown. Sudden silence, shocking after hours of constant engine roar. He sits motionless for a moment, hands shaking slightly from released adrenaline. He's alive. He completed another mission. He shot down another British fighter. He's still lucky. Karl is waiting when Richter climbs down, his expression relieved. The mechanic walks around the aircraft, examining the bullet holes, shaking his head. You call this bringing her back in one piece, Herr Lieutenant? She flew home, didn't she? Counts as one piece in my book. The other pilots are gathering, comparing experiences, debriefing informally before the official session. Werner approaches, grinning. Nice shooting today, Hans. That Spitfire didn't know what hit him. Thanks to you. You saved my ass when that other one came around. What are wingmen for? You do the same for me. They would and they have, multiple times. The bond between them is stronger than friendship, deeper than camaraderie. They're brothers in the truest sense, forged not by blood but by shared survival, by mutual dependence, by absolute trust. The celebration is muted. They lost 2 pilots today. Unteroffizier Schmidt and Lieutenant Bauer, both experienced, both skilled, both dead now or captured. The empty spaces in the formation are conspicuous, painful reminders that luck runs out, that skill isn't always sufficient, that death takes randomly without regard for merit or justice. Major Heller addresses the gathered pilots, his face grave. Good work today. The bombers hit their target. We protected them successfully. But we paid a price. Schmidt and Bauer didn't return. We don't know their fate. Hope they're alive, hope they're prisoners. But we must assume the worst and continue the mission. Tomorrow we go again. And the day after. And the day after that. Until Britain surrenders or we achieve air superiority necessary for invasion. Rest tonight. You've earned it. Dismissed. Richter walks toward the barracks, exhausted beyond words. The mission lasted 3 hours. It felt like 3 days. Combat compresses time, makes seconds eternal while making hours disappear. His body aches, his hands still shake, his mind replays the dogfight endlessly, analyzing every decision, every maneuver, searching for mistakes that could have killed him. He reaches his bunk, collapses onto it fully clothed. Sleep should come easily, exhaustion overwhelming. But his mind won't quiet. He sees the Spitfire falling, smoking, crashing. He wonders about the British pilot. Was he killed instantly? Did he bail out? Is he alive, injured, captured? Does he have family, loved ones who will mourn him? These thoughts are dangerous. Pilots can't afford empathy for enemies. sentiment gets you killed. The British pilot would have shot Richter down without hesitation if positions were reversed. This is war. Kill or be killed. Simple, brutal, absolute. But Richter can't entirely silence his conscience. He was raised to value honor, chivalry, warrior virtues. The propaganda depicts war as glorious, combat as noble, pilots as knights of the sky engaging in honorable single combat. But the reality is different, messier, less romantic. The reality is young men killing other young men for reasons neither fully understands, following orders given by leaders who remain safely distant from danger. Still, he believes in duty. He believes Germany is fighting for survival, for its rightful place among nations, for justice denied after the Great War. He believes the British are enemies who must be defeated to secure German future. He believes his service matters, his sacrifices are necessary, his actions are justified. He believes these things because the alternative is unbearable. To question the cause is to question everything, to undermine the foundation that makes his service meaningful. So he doesn't question. He accepts. He flies. He fights. He survives. And he tries not to think too deeply about the men he kills, about the destruction he participates in, about the price of victory. Tomorrow he'll fly again. Tomorrow he'll cross the channel, engage British fighters, try to kill them before they kill him. Tomorrow he'll risk his life for the Reich, for Germany, for duty and honor and all the ideals that make war seem purposeful rather than senseless. But tonight, lying on his bunk, staring at the ceiling, he allows himself doubt. Brief, private, never to be spoken aloud. He wonders if the British pilot he shot down today also believed in duty, also fought for ideals, also thought his cause was just. He wonders if they're really so different, young men on opposite sides of a war neither created, both convinced they're fighting for right, both willing to die for beliefs instilled by nations and propaganda and circumstances beyond individual control. These thoughts lead nowhere productive. Richter forces them away, closes his eyes, wills himself toward sleep. Tomorrow will bring more combat, more danger, more opportunities to prove his worth as a pilot. He needs rest, needs to maintain edge, needs to stay sharp because survival depends on split-second reactions and clear thinking. The doubts will return. They always do, in quiet moments between missions, in the darkness before sleep. But for now, he buries them, accepts his role, embraces his duty. He is Lieutenant Hans Richter, fighter pilot, Luftwaffe, serving the Reich in the skies above England. Tomorrow, the war continues. Tomorrow, he flies again. Tomorrow, he will try to survive one more day in the endless, brutal arithmetic of aerial combat. Tonight, he is simply a young man, exhausted and afraid and trying to sleep before the killing begins again. One Day in the Sky, Act 2. August 18, 1940. 5 weeks have passed since that first mission over Kent. 5 weeks of daily combat, daily death, daily erosion of everything Richter thought he understood about war and honor and himself. The Battle of Britain has intensified beyond anything the Luftwaffe anticipated. The British are not collapsing. They're not surrendering. Despite losses, despite bombing raids that devastate their airfields, despite the mathematical certainty that Germany must win through sheer numerical superiority, the RAF keeps fighting. More fighters appear each day. More pilots. More resistance. Richter's squadron has lost half its original strength. 12 aircraft became 6. New pilots arrive as replacements, fresh from training schools, eager and terrified and doomed. Most don't survive their first week. They lack experience, lack the instincts that keep veterans alive. They make small mistakes that become fatal. They hesitate, they panic, they die. Werner is still alive. Still Richter's wingman. Still the steady presence that anchors Richter's survival. But Werner has changed. They've all changed. The casual confidence is gone, replaced by grim determination. The joking bravado has disappeared, replaced by professional efficiency. They don't celebrate kills anymore. They don't count victories. They simply fly, fight, return, and prepare to do it again tomorrow. Richter has 11 confirmed kills now. 11 British aircraft destroyed, 11 pilots killed or captured. The number means nothing to him. It's just a statistic, a measurement of survival rather than achievement. Each kill represents a moment when he reacted faster, aimed better, got luckier than his opponent. Nothing more. Nothing glorious. He stands on the tarmac this morning, August 18, watching mechanics prepare his Messerschmitt. The aircraft has been repaired so many times it's barely the same machine he flew in July. New panels cover bullet damage. Replacement parts from other destroyed fighters keep it airworthy. It's a patchwork, held together by skill and determination and the desperate need to keep every available aircraft operational. Karl approaches, his face showing the same exhaustion everyone feels. The ground crews work 18-hour days, repairing battle damage, maintaining engines, loading ammunition. They're as critical to the battle as pilots, perhaps more so. A brilliant pilot in a broken aircraft is useless. A mediocre pilot in a perfectly maintained machine has fighting chance. She's ready again, her lieutenant, Karl says, his voice flat, mechanical. Even the rituals have lost their warmth. Try not to bring back too many holes this time, yes. We're running low on replacement panels. Richter nods, too tired for banter. I'll do my best, Karl. The briefing is identical to yesterday's, and the day before, and the day before that. Major Heller, looking older than his 32 years, points at the same map, indicates another target. Fighters sweep over London. We escort bombers hitting docks and industrial areas. RAF will defend heavily. Expect Hurricane and Spitfire squadrons in large numbers. Standard tactics. Protect the bombers. Engage enemy fighters. Return safely. The last instruction is almost funny. Return safely. As if survival is a choice, as if following orders guarantees anything. Pilots don't return safely. They return lucky, having survived another roll of dice, another spin of the roulette wheel where death is the only certainty and survival is temporary accident. They take off in the early afternoon, a reduced formation now, only 8 Messerschmitts where 12 used to fly. The gaps are visible, obvious, painful. The new pilots fill some positions, young faces that Richter doesn't bother learning. They'll be gone soon, replaced by other young faces, an endless supply of eager boys fed into the meat grinder. The channel crossing is routine now, familiar. Richter barely notices the transition from French to English airspace. The landscape below means nothing, just terrain to be fought over, defended or conquered depending on which side you're on. The villages, the fields, the lives of people down there, all of it is abstraction, irrelevant to the immediate task of staying alive. The bombers are ahead, heavy with payload, slow and vulnerable. They're heading for London, for the first time targeting the capital city itself. This is escalation, retaliation for British bombing of Berlin. The gloves are coming off. Total war, civilian populations becoming legitimate targets, all pretense of limiting conflict to military objectives abandoned. Richter feels uneasy about this shift. Bombing cities, killing civilians, it contradicts everything he was taught about honorable warfare. But he doesn't voice his concerns. Questioning orders is pointless, dangerous. He's a fighter pilot, not a strategist. His job is protecting bombers, not debating target selection. The British fighters appear earlier than expected, climbing from below in massive formations. Not 6 Spitfires this time. Dozens of them. Squadrons coordinating, attacking in waves, overwhelming through numbers what they might lack in individual skill. The RAF has learned, adapted, developed tactics specifically to counter German fighter escorts. Major Heller's voice, tight with tension. Incoming fighters, multiple directions. Blue section, take high cover. Red section, stay close to bombers. Here they come. The sky erupts into chaos. Aircraft everywhere, twisting, turning, firing. The formations dissolve instantly into individual dogfights, pilots fighting for survival, wingmen separated, all cohesion lost in the fury of combat. Richter finds himself alone, Werner nowhere visible. A hurricane is on his tail, tracers passing close, too close. He brakes hard right, pulls into a climbing turn, trying to reverse positions. The hurricane follows, pilots skillful, aggressive, not giving Richter the separation needed to maneuver effectively. They spiral upward, both aircraft at maximum power, engines screaming. Richter's vision narrows from G-forces, black spots appearing at the edges. He fights to stay conscious, to maintain control, to execute the maneuvers that might save his life. The hurricane is still there, still firing, shells impacting his fuselage, tearing metal, destroying systems. His engine coughs, stutters, begins losing power. Coolant spraying across his windscreen, obscuring vision. Temperature gauge spiking into red zone. He's been hit critically, his aircraft is dying, and he's deep over England with no friendly territory within gliding range. The hurricane breaks off, apparently satisfied that Richter is finished, seeking other targets. Richter is alone, his Messerschmitt shuddering, losing altitude, smoke pouring from the engine cowling. He needs to bail out, needs to abandon the aircraft before it explodes or enters uncontrolled spin. But bailing out means capture, means becoming prisoner, means the war is over for him. He fights to keep the aircraft flying, nursing the dying engine, searching for anywhere to land. Below, English countryside spreads in every direction, fields and farms and small villages. No airfields visible, no friendly forces, just enemy territory where landing means capture at best, angry civilians at worst. The engine seizes completely, propeller freezing, instant silence except for wind rushing past the canopy. The Messerschmitt becomes a glider, still controllable but descending steadily, inexorably. Richter has perhaps 2 minutes to find landing spot, execute approach, survive the crash. He spots a field, relatively flat, no obvious obstacles. It'll have to do. He lines up, lowers flaps manually since hydraulics are dead, aims for the smoothest section. The ground rushes up, faster than expected. He flares just before impact, trying to bleed off speed, trying to keep the nose up. The landing gear collapses on contact, never designed for rough field landings. The Messerschmitt slams down on its belly, plowing through grass and dirt, tearing metal, shedding parts. Richter's head snaps forward against restraints, stunning impact, vision blurring. The aircraft slides, spins, finally stops. Silence. Shocking, complete silence after the chaos of combat and the roar of the crash. Richter sits motionless, assessing damage. His head throbs. His shoulder aches where the harness dug in. But nothing seems broken. He's alive. Incredibly, impossibly, he's alive. He pops the canopy, climbs out carefully, drops to the ground. His legs are shaky, barely supporting his weight. The Messerschmitt is destroyed, fuselage crumpled, wings bent, a total loss. But it served its purpose, brought him down alive. He feels strange gratitude toward the machine, this patchwork fighter that Karl maintained so carefully, that carried him through so many missions, that died saving his life. He hears voices, shouts, people approaching. English voices. Local civilians, farmers probably, converging on the crash site. Richter considers running but immediately dismisses the idea. Where would he go? He's deep in England, wearing Luftwaffe uniform, speaking no English. He'd be caught within hours. Better to surrender with dignity than be hunted like an animal. 3 men approach, carrying farming tools that could serve as weapons. They're cautious, wary, but not openly hostile. They're middle-aged, civilians, farmers who've probably never been closer to war than newsreels and radio broadcasts. Now war has literally crashed into their field. Richter raises his hands, universal gesture of surrender. One of the men, gray-haired and weathered, steps forward cautiously. He says something in English, questioning tone. Richter doesn't understand the words but comprehends the meaning. Who are you? Are you armed? Are you injured? Luftwaffe, Richter says, gesturing to his uniform. Pilot. Prisoner. He uses the few English words he knows, hoping they understand. No weapon. Surrender. The men relax slightly, realizing he's not threatening them. The gray-haired one says something to his companions, then gestures for Richter to follow. They're taking him somewhere, probably to local authorities, to Home Guard or police. His war is over. He's a prisoner now. They walk across fields toward a small village visible in the distance. Richter notices details he never saw from altitude. Stone walls dividing fields. Sheep grazing peacefully. A stream meandering through pasture. The countryside is beautiful, peaceful, utterly disconnected from the war being fought in the sky above it. They reach the village, a cluster of cottages around a small church. People emerge, curious and cautious, gathering to stare at the German pilot. Richter expects hostility, anger, perhaps violence. These are people his bombers have been attacking, whose cities are being destroyed, whose countrymen are dying. They have every reason to hate him. But the expressions he sees are mostly curiosity and something else. Pity. Concern. One woman, elderly and kind-faced, brings him a cup of water. He drinks gratefully, realizing he's desperately thirsty. She says something in English, gentle tone, motherly. Richter doesn't understand the words but feels the kindness behind them. A man in Home Guard uniform arrives, elderly but carrying himself with military bearing. Probably a Great War veteran, called back to service for home defense. He speaks to Richter in broken German, just enough for basic communication. You are prisoner, the man says carefully. We take you to proper authorities. You are safe. No harm. Understand? Richter nods. I understand. Thank you. You are injured. Richter assesses himself. No. Small injuries only. I am okay. The Home Guard soldier nods, almost sympathetically. You are very young. Too young for war, yes. The observation strikes Richter deeply. He is young. 21 years old. He should be in university, starting career, falling in love, living normal life. Instead, he's standing in an English village, a prisoner, his aircraft destroyed, his war over. Too young for war. Yes. Far too young. They place him in a small room, probably the village hall, while they arrange transportation to a proper POW facility. The room has chairs, a table, windows looking onto the village square. It's not a cell. They're not treating him as dangerous criminal. Just as defeated soldier, now their responsibility to house and eventually transfer to military custody. Richter sits, exhaustion overwhelming him. The adrenaline has faded, leaving behind bone-deep weariness. His hands shake slightly. His head aches. He should feel relief. He survived. The war is over for him. No more missions, no more combat, no more daily terror. He's safe now, relatively. Prisoner camps are difficult but not deadly. He'll survive the war, return to Germany eventually, resume his life. But he doesn't feel relief. He feels strange numbness, disconnection. The British villagers, the kind woman with water, the sympathetic Home Guard veteran, they're supposed to be his enemies. He's been taught to hate them, to see them as obstacles to German victory. But they're just people. Ordinary people, no different from Germans, showing basic human decency to a defeated enemy. The door opens. The Home Guard soldier enters with a younger man wearing RAF uniform. A pilot, Richter recognizes immediately from the wings on his jacket. The British pilot is perhaps Richter's age, maybe slightly older. He looks tired, drawn, carrying the same exhaustion Richter sees in mirrors. I'm Flight Lieutenant William Parker, the RAF pilot says in perfect German. I've been asked to speak with you, verify some details before your transfer. May I sit? Richter nods, gestures to a chair. Parker sits, studying Richter with open curiosity. Not hostility. Just interest, the way one professional might evaluate another. You were flying a Messerschmitt 109, yes. What happened? Hurricane hit my engine. Coolant system destroyed. I had to land. Parker nods. You did well bringing her down in one piece. That field is tricky. Could have been much worse. You are pilot? Richter asks, already knowing the answer. Yes. Spitfire pilot. 72 Squadron. I was up today, actually. Saw your formation. Quite a battle. They sit in silence for a moment, two young pilots on opposite sides of a war, now face to face not in combat but in conversation. Richter feels surreal disconnection from reality. Hours ago, he might have been shooting at this man, trying to kill him. Now they're talking calmly, almost collegially. How long have you been flying? Parker asks. 8 months. Since December. You've had a busy 8 months. Battle of France, now this. You must be exhausted. Richter laughs bitterly. Yes. Very exhausted. We all are. This battle, it's grinding everyone down. We lose pilots daily. You lose pilots daily. It's unsustainable for both sides. The observation is startling in its honesty. Parker isn't spouting propaganda, isn't claiming British invincibility. He's acknowledging reality that both sides face, the brutal arithmetic of attrition that's killing young men faster than training schools can replace them. Who do you think will win? Richter asks, surprising himself with the question. Parker considers carefully. We will. Eventually. Not because we're better. Not because we're braver. But because we're defending our home. You're attacking across hostile water. You need total victory. We just need to not lose. That's enormous advantage. The logic is sound, undeniable. Richter has never considered it from that perspective. The Luftwaffe needs complete air superiority for invasion to succeed. The RAF just needs to survive, to contest the skies enough to make invasion impossible. It's asymmetric warfare favoring defense. You believe Germany will lose the war? Richter asks quietly. Parker looks at him directly, serious. I believe this war will destroy everyone involved, regardless of who wins technically. You've seen combat. You know what it costs. How many friends have you lost? Richter doesn't answer immediately. He's lost count. Pilots he trained with, flew with, shared meals and jokes and fears with. Dead now, most of them. Names and faces that blur together into collective memory of loss. Too many, he finally says. Same here. I've lost my entire original squadron. Everyone I started with is gone. Dead, injured, or broken mentally. I'm the last one left from June. That can't continue indefinitely. Something has to give. They sit in silence again. The conversation has moved far beyond prisoner interrogation, beyond enemy interaction. They're speaking as equals, as fellow sufferers, as young men caught in circumstances beyond their control, trying to survive and make sense of senseless situation. What will you do? Richter asks. After the war, I mean. If you survive. Parker smiles sadly. I don't think that far ahead anymore. Planning for future feels like tempting fate. Every mission might be the last. I just fly, try to survive today, worry about tomorrow when it comes. You. The same. I wanted to be engineer before the war. Design aircraft, not destroy them. Maybe after, if. He trails off, the conditional too uncertain to complete. If we both survive, perhaps we'll meet again. Different circumstances. Better circumstances. Perhaps. A military lorry arrives outside, visible through the window. Parker stands, the brief moment of connection ending, returning to official roles. Prisoner and captor. German and British. Enemies divided by war even while recognizing their fundamental similarity. They're here to transport you to a POW camp. It's not luxury, but it's safe. Food, shelter, medical care. You'll be treated according to Geneva Convention. War will end eventually. You'll go home. Richter stands, faces Parker. On impulse, he extends his hand. Parker hesitates only briefly before shaking it, formal gesture of respect between adversaries. Good luck, Richter says. You too. Survive the war. Go home. Become that engineer. They leave the building together. The villagers watch, curious but not hostile. Richter climbs into the back of the lorry, guards flanking him. As the vehicle pulls away, he looks back at the village, at Parker standing beside the Home Guard veteran, watching him depart. His war is over. The realization settles slowly. No more missions. No more combat. No more daily fear of death. He should feel relieved, grateful. Instead, he feels empty, hollowed out, uncertain what comes next. He's defined himself as pilot, as fighter, as warrior. Now he's prisoner, defeated, removed from the conflict that gave his life structure and purpose. The lorry drives through English countryside, heading toward whatever camp will house him for however long the war continues. Richter watches the landscape pass, this enemy country that no longer feels particularly enemy. Just another place, filled with ordinary people living ordinary lives, trying to survive extraordinary circumstances. He thinks about Werner, still flying, still fighting. He thinks about his squadron, reduced to fragments. He thinks about Karl, who maintained his aircraft so faithfully, who'll now maintain someone else's fighter, keeping the war machine operational. He thinks about Major Heller, leading dwindling forces against overwhelming odds. And he thinks about Parker, the British pilot who showed him unexpected kindness, who spoke honestly about the cost of war, who shook his hand and wished him luck. The enemy who wasn't really enemy at all, just another young man trapped in the same terrible machine, trying to survive, trying to maintain humanity in dehumanizing circumstances. The war continues without him now. The Battle of Britain will be won or lost by others. Germany will triumph or fail based on decisions made by leaders far from combat, far from danger, far from the daily reality of young men killing each other over ideology and territory and pride. Richter is done with all of it. His war is over. He's going to survive. And somehow, that realization brings not joy but profound, overwhelming sadness for all the others who won't, for all the pilots still flying, still fighting, still dying in the endless, pointless arithmetic of aerial combat. The lorry continues toward his future, whatever that future might be, while behind him the sky remains clear and blue and empty of aircraft, momentarily peaceful before the next wave of bombers arrives and the killing begins again. One Day in the Sky, Act 3. September 1945. 5 years have passed since that August day when Richter's Messerschmitt crashed into an English field. 5 years spent in prisoner-of-war camps, first in England, then transferred to Canada as the war dragged on and British facilities became overcrowded. 5 years of waiting, of wondering, of watching from behind barbed wire as the world tore itself apart. The war in Europe ended in May. Germany surrendered unconditionally, defeated utterly, occupied by Allied forces. The Reich that was supposed to last 1,000 years collapsed after 12. Hitler is dead, suicide in a Berlin bunker as Soviet forces closed in. The Luftwaffe is destroyed, its aircraft scrapped, its airfields captured. The mighty German war machine that seemed invincible in 1940 is now nothing but wreckage and memory. Richter learned about the defeat through camp newspapers, through radio broadcasts the guards allowed prisoners to hear, through the visible changes in guard behavior as victory became certain. Some prisoners refused to believe it, insisted it was Allied propaganda, clung to faith in ultimate German triumph even as evidence mounted overwhelmingly. Others accepted reality immediately, felt relief that the killing had finally stopped, that they'd survived when so many hadn't. Richter felt neither disbelief nor relief. Just numbness, emptiness, the hollow realization that everything he'd fought for, everything he believed in, was ash and ruins. Germany was destroyed. Millions were dead. Cities were rubble. The cause he'd served with such dedication had led only to catastrophe and genocide and unconditional defeat. The repatriation process begins in late summer. Prisoners are processed slowly, methodically, sorted by classification and risk assessment. Former SS members are held for war crimes investigation. High-ranking officers are detained for intelligence debriefing. Regular Wehrmacht soldiers like Richter are cleared for return, assuming they can demonstrate they weren't involved in atrocities. Richter passes all screenings easily. He was a fighter pilot, engaged only in aerial combat, never participated in ground operations or occupation duties. His record is clean, relatively. He shot down British aircraft, yes. He killed enemy pilots. But that was legitimate warfare, sanctioned by international convention, no different from what Allied pilots did to German forces. He's not a war criminal. Just a defeated soldier, now free to go home. Home. The word feels strange, almost meaningless. What home? Germany is occupied, divided between Soviet and Western zones. His family's town is in the Soviet sector, inaccessible, cut off behind what people are already calling the Iron Curtain. His parents, if they're alive, are trapped under communist control. His younger sister, who was 14 when he last saw her, is now 19, grown into adulthood during his absence. The British authorities provide minimal assistance. A train ticket to Hamburg, some occupation currency, basic documentation. The rest is his responsibility. Survive, find family, rebuild life from nothing. Good luck. Thousands of former prisoners are making the same journey, flooding back into a Germany that no longer exists, trying to find places in a society that has collapsed completely. The journey across the channel is strange, surreal. Richter stands on the deck of a transport ship, watching the English coast recede, then the French coast appear. He's crossing the same water he flew over so many times in 1940, the barrier between safety and danger, between home and enemy territory. But now everything is reversed, confused. England was the enemy, now it's the victor allowing him to leave. France was conquered territory, now it's liberated and rebuilding. Germany was home, now it's occupied, divided, defeated. The landscape he sees from the train window shocks him. France and Germany are destroyed, systematically demolished by years of warfare. Cities are ruins, factories are bombed husks, bridges are collapsed, rail lines are hastily repaired. Refugees fill the roads, millions of displaced people trudging in all directions, searching for homes that no longer exist, looking for families who might be dead. Hamburg appears worse than anything he imagined. The city is gone, simply gone. Allied bombing has reduced it to rubble, block after block of collapsed buildings, twisted metal, charred stone. People live in basements and ruins, scavenging for food, burning furniture for heat, surviving day by day in conditions approaching medieval. This is what Germany has become. This is the price of defeat. Richter makes his way east, toward his hometown, hitching rides on military trucks, walking when necessary, sleeping in ruins and refugee shelters. Everyone is moving, seeking, searching. Displaced persons from every nation, former prisoners, concentration camp survivors, ethnic Germans expelled from eastern territories, soldiers returning from captivity. The roads are rivers of humanity, flowing across a destroyed continent. He reaches the Soviet occupation zone boundary in early October. Guards patrol the border, checking papers, controlling movement. Richter's documentation identifies him as former Luftwaffe, repatriated from British captivity. The Soviet soldiers eye him suspiciously but allow him through. They're less concerned with former Wehrmacht than with potential spies or resistance organizers. His hometown is smaller than he remembered, shabbier, marked by war. Some buildings show bomb damage. Others are simply neglected, paint peeling, windows broken, maintenance abandoned during years of total war. Soviet flags hang where Nazi banners once flew. Soviet soldiers patrol where Wehrmacht units once marched. The occupation is complete, absolute, transforming. Richter approaches his family home with increasing dread. The building still stands, but windows are dark, door is closed. He knocks, waits, hears nothing. He tries the door, finds it locked. He peers through windows, sees empty rooms, no furniture, no signs of habitation. His family is gone. Where? When? Why? A neighbor appears, an elderly woman Richter vaguely remembers from childhood. She recognizes him, shows shock, then sadness. She explains without him asking, her voice flat, worn down by years of delivering terrible news. His father died in 1943, heart attack, stress and malnutrition. His mother and sister evacuated west ahead of Soviet advance in 1945, fled to the Western Zone, are somewhere in the British sector if they survived the journey. Richter thanks her, feels nothing. His father is dead. His family is scattered. His home is empty. Everything that existed before the war is gone, swept away, irretrievable. He turns west again, begins the long journey toward the British zone, toward the slim hope of finding his mother and sister among millions of refugees. The search takes months. He moves from camp to camp, from displaced persons centers to refugee registration offices, showing photographs that survived his captivity, asking questions, following leads that mostly lead nowhere. He finds them in February 1946, in a refugee camp near Hanover. His mother has aged decades, her hair completely white, her face lined and exhausted. His sister is unrecognizable, the cheerful child transformed into hardened young woman who's seen too much, endured too much, survived horrors she won't discuss. The reunion is emotional but strained, complicated by years of separation, by individual traumas that can't be easily shared or understood. They're strangers now, family in name but disconnected by experience. His mother wants to know about his captivity, wants to understand what he endured. He can't explain, can't translate the boredom and frustration and slow psychological erosion of prison camp life. His sister won't speak about her experiences fleeing west, about what happened during the chaotic final months of war when refugees were bombed and strafed and preyed upon by soldiers of all armies. They don't ask about his war service, don't inquire about his kills or missions or experiences. Perhaps they understand that combat can't be discussed, that some experiences are too dark to share. Perhaps they simply don't want to know, prefer to avoid confronting what their son and brother did in the name of duty and patriotism. Richter finds work, eventually. Not as an engineer, his pre-war dream. That requires education he never completed, credentials that no longer exist. Instead, he labors in reconstruction, the massive effort to rebuild Germany from rubble. He clears debris, salvages materials, helps construct temporary housing. It's physical work, exhausting, poorly paid. But it's honest, necessary, contributing to something constructive rather than destructive. He never speaks about the war. Not to co-workers, not to family, not to anyone. When people learn he was Luftwaffe, was a pilot, they sometimes ask questions, seek stories, want to hear about aerial combat and daring missions. He deflects, changes subject, shuts down conversation. The war is finished. Those years are buried. He survived, he returned, that's enough. But the war haunts him anyway, despite his silence. He dreams about it constantly, relives missions, re-experiences combat. He wakes sweating, heart racing, hearing engine sounds and gunfire that aren't real. His hands shake sometimes, unexplained tremors that appear during stress or fatigue. He startles at loud noises, flinches at sudden movements, exhibits behaviors he recognizes from other veterans, the invisible wounds that don't heal with time. He thinks about Werner constantly, wondering about his wingman's fate. Did he survive the war? Was he killed in combat? Is he in Soviet captivity, trapped in labor camps where German prisoners disappear for years or forever? Richter has no way to know, no means to search. The chaos of post-war Germany makes tracking individuals nearly impossible. People are scattered, records are destroyed, entire populations are displaced. Werner could be anywhere or nowhere. He thinks about Parker too, the British pilot who showed him unexpected kindness, who spoke honestly about war's cost, who wished him luck. Did Parker survive? Did he go home, resume the normal life the war interrupted? Or did he die in combat, another casualty of the endless battle that consumed so many young pilots? Richter will never know, never learn what happened to the man who represented something important, some proof that humanity persists even in warfare's dehumanizing circumstances. The years pass slowly, marked by gradual improvement in living conditions, slow economic recovery, tentative reconstruction of society. Germany remains divided, split between East and West, between Soviet communism and Western democracy. Richter's mother and sister are in the West, relatively fortunate, benefiting from Marshall Plan aid and Allied investment. His hometown in the East becomes inaccessible, sealed behind barriers and ideological walls that solidify into permanent division. Richter eventually completes his engineering education, attending technical school at night while working construction during day. It takes years, the process delayed by his age, his gaps in education, his limited resources. But he persists, driven by the pre-war dream he never abandoned, the vision of creating rather than destroying, of building aircraft rather than flying them into combat. He finds employment with an aviation company in 1952, 12 years after his last combat mission. The work is civilian, commercial aircraft design, completely disconnected from military applications. Germany is forbidden from maintaining military aviation by occupation agreements, a restriction Richter welcomes. He never wants to design weapons, never wants to contribute to warfare, never wants any connection to the violence he participated in. His colleagues don't know about his wartime service. He doesn't hide it exactly, but he doesn't advertise it either. When personnel forms require military history, he writes the minimum: Luftwaffe, 1939–1940, captured and interned. No elaboration, no details, no stories. Most people don't ask. The war is past, better left unexamined, buried under the urgency of rebuilding and moving forward. He never marries. There are opportunities, women who show interest, possibilities for relationship and family. But he can't commit, can't open himself emotionally, can't share the darkness that lives inside him. He's too damaged, too haunted, too aware of life's fragility and relationships' impermanence. He lives alone, works steadily, exists in quiet isolation that feels safer than intimacy. The 1960s bring renewed interest in World War II, historical examination of the conflict now that enough time has passed for some emotional distance. Books are published, documentaries are produced, veterans are interviewed. Some former Luftwaffe pilots write memoirs, glorify their service, portray aerial combat as honorable and their cause as just. Others remain silent, refuse to participate in what they see as whitewashing of Germany's crimes. Richter is contacted by a historian researching the Battle of Britain, asking for interview, requesting his perspective on the campaign. He declines politely but firmly. He has nothing to say that would be useful, nothing to contribute to historical understanding. His memories are personal, subjective, darkened by trauma and guilt. They don't deserve public airing, don't merit preservation or analysis. But privately, alone in his small apartment, he writes. Not for publication, not for sharing. Just for himself, an attempt to process experiences that have never been adequately examined or understood. He writes about his missions, about Werner, about the pilots he killed. He writes about the crash, about Parker, about the unexpected kindness that challenged everything he believed about enemies and warfare. He writes about his doubts, the questions that began forming during combat and never resolved. What was the point? What did all the killing accomplish? Germany lost, was destroyed, was divided. Millions died for a cause that collapsed completely. The honorable warfare he believed in proved to be neither honorable nor justified. Young men killed each other while old men made decisions and avoided consequences. He writes about Parker's observation, the analysis that proved prophetic. Britain didn't need to win, just needed to survive. Germany needed total victory and achieved only total defeat. The asymmetry was obvious in hindsight, but invisible during the battle, obscured by propaganda and ideology and the immediate demands of survival. He writes about the British villagers who treated him decently, who brought water and showed kindness to a defeated enemy. He writes about the disconnect between propaganda portraying enemies as monsters and the reality of encountering ordinary people who happen to be born in different countries. He writes about the realization that nationality is accident, that circumstances determine sides, that the young men he killed were fundamentally no different from him. The writing brings no catharsis, no healing. The guilt remains, the nightmares continue, the tremors persist. But it provides some structure to chaos, some narrative framework for experiences that otherwise feel random and senseless. He fills notebooks with observations and memories and questions that have no satisfying answers. In 1974, he reads a newspaper article about the Battle of Britain's anniversary. RAF veterans are gathering in London for commemorations, honoring the pilots who defended Britain in 1940. The article includes photographs of survivors, old men now, wearing their uniforms, displaying their medals, sharing their memories. Richter studies the photographs carefully, searching faces, looking for Parker. He doesn't find him. Probably Parker is absent, either dead or simply not participating. Or perhaps Richter wouldn't recognize him anyway. Faces change across decades, youth becomes age, and memory is imperfect. But the article mentions that many former Luftwaffe pilots were invited to the commemoration, offered reconciliation and recognition that they too were simply soldiers following orders, fighting for their country as RAF pilots fought for theirs. Some German veterans attended, shook hands with former enemies, participated in ceremonies acknowledging shared experience and mutual respect. Richter doesn't attend. He can't imagine returning to England, facing British veterans, pretending that warfare was noble or that shared military service creates bonds stronger than the violence they inflicted on each other. He has no desire for reconciliation, no need for recognition. He wants only to forget, to leave the past buried where it belongs. He retires in 1978, at 60 years old, ending a quiet career in aviation engineering. His work contributed to commercial aircraft that carry passengers safely, that connect continents, that enable peaceful travel rather than warfare. It's not redemption exactly, not compensation for the destruction he participated in. But it's something, a small contribution to construction rather than destruction. He continues living alone, maintaining minimal social contact, existing in routines that provide stability and predictability. He reads extensively, follows current events, watches television. He's aware of ongoing conflicts around the world, of wars continuing despite World War II's supposed lessons. Vietnam, the Middle East, Africa, perpetual violence justified by different ideologies but fundamentally unchanged. Young men still killing each other while old men make decisions. In 1985, he receives unexpected letter from England. It's forwarded through multiple addresses, having tracked him through engineering company records and government databases. The return address identifies the sender as William Parker. Richter's hands shake as he opens the envelope, decades-old memories flooding back. Parker is alive. Survived the war, lived through the past 45 years, somehow located Richter after all this time. The letter is brief, carefully worded. Parker explains that he's organizing a small private gathering of Battle of Britain veterans, both British and German, not for publicity or commemoration but for private conversation, for honest discussion about their shared experiences. He remembers meeting Richter in that English village in 1940, remembers their conversation, wonders if Richter might be willing to attend, to continue that interrupted dialogue after 45 years. Richter reads the letter repeatedly, weighing the invitation, examining his reactions. His first instinct is refusal, automatic rejection of anything requiring him to revisit that period. But something in Parker's phrasing resonates, the emphasis on honest conversation rather than celebration, on private dialogue rather than public performance. He responds cautiously, expressing interest but no commitment. Parker writes back with details. A small group, perhaps a dozen men, meeting at a private location in southern England. No media, no recording, no publicity. Just veterans talking frankly about experiences they've carried silently for decades. Richter decides to attend. He's not certain why. Perhaps because Parker's kindness in 1940 created obligation that persists across decades. Perhaps because he's curious about Parker's life, about how another veteran processed the same experiences. Perhaps because he's simply old, aware that time is limited, willing to risk discomfort for the possibility of understanding. He travels to England in October 1985, 45 years after his last visit. The country has changed enormously, rebuilt from war damage, modernized, prosperous. The scars of bombing are mostly erased, replaced by new construction and contemporary architecture. Only certain areas preserve ruins as memorials, deliberate reminders of what was endured and overcome. The gathering takes place in a country house, private estate made available by one of the participants. Richter arrives nervous, uncertain what to expect. Inside, he finds a dozen men, all in their 60s, all carrying the same weathered appearance of aged veterans. Some are British, former RAF pilots. Others are German, former Luftwaffe. They mingle awkwardly, decades of peace not entirely erasing old divisions. Parker recognizes Richter immediately despite the years, despite age transforming them both. They shake hands, the gesture recalling their first meeting 4.5 decades earlier. Parker looks old, gray-haired and lined, but his eyes remain sharp, intelligent, observant. The gathering proceeds without formal structure. The men sit in a large room, drinks in hand, beginning tentative conversations that gradually deepen into genuine dialogue. They speak about combat, about fear, about losses. They discuss the Battle of Britain from both perspectives, German attackers and British defenders, comparing experiences that were simultaneous but opposite. What emerges is consensus about war's fundamental nature. None of them glorify combat. None celebrate killing. They speak instead about terror and confusion and the randomness of survival. They acknowledge that skill mattered less than luck, that many brilliant pilots died while less capable ones survived simply because bullets missed by centimeters rather than hitting. They discuss their post-war lives, the difficulties reintegrating into civilian society, the nightmares and tremors and psychological wounds that never properly healed. They compare coping mechanisms, some healthy, many not. Alcohol, isolation, workaholism, all strategies for avoiding confrontation with trauma that demanded processing. Several British veterans speak about their anger toward German veterans, feelings they've carried for decades, resentment toward the men who bombed their cities and killed their countrymen. But meeting actual Germans, hearing their stories, recognizing their humanity, it complicates the anger, makes it harder to sustain simple hatred toward people who are obviously not monsters but simply men who made choices within circumstances not of their creation. German veterans express guilt about serving the Nazi regime, about participating in aggressive war even if they personally weren't involved in atrocities. They describe the cognitive dissonance of believing they were defending Germany while actually enabling genocide and conquest. They discuss how they reconcile past service with present knowledge, how they live with having fought for a cause that proved utterly evil. Richter speaks little, mostly listening, absorbing others' perspectives. But eventually Parker asks him directly about his experience, about his crash and capture, about what he's done with the past 45 years. Richter responds honestly, perhaps more honestly than he's ever spoken about the war. He describes his doubts during combat, his growing awareness that the cause was unjust, his inability to reconcile duty with conscience. He talks about his engineering career, his deliberate choice of civilian work, his attempt to contribute to construction after years of destruction. He mentions the writing he's done privately, the notebooks filled with observations and questions. Parker asks if he's considered publishing, sharing his perspective. Richter shakes his head. The writing was personal therapy, not historical documentation. It's not polished or coherent enough for publication. More importantly, he doesn't believe his perspective deserves preservation. He was on the wrong side, fighting for evil cause. His memories don't merit validation through publication. Parker challenges this view gently but firmly. Historical understanding requires multiple perspectives, including voices of those who fought for losing sides, for wrong causes. Silence about Wehrmacht experience doesn't erase that experience, just impoverishes understanding of how ordinary men become complicit in evil, how duty and patriotism can be manipulated toward terrible ends. The gathering continues through the evening and into night. The conversations remain serious but not hostile, honest without becoming accusatory. By the end, something has shifted among the group, some barrier has lowered. They're not friends exactly, not united by shared military service as propaganda might suggest. But they're fellow survivors, men who endured similar trauma from opposite sides, who recognize in each other the marks of experiences that can't be fully communicated to those who weren't there. Richter returns to Germany feeling unsettled but not regretful. The gathering didn't provide closure or healing. Those aren't possible. But it provided something else, some acknowledgement that his experiences were real, that his struggles were legitimate, that the contradictions he's carried for decades are shared by others who navigated similar moral complexity. He begins considering Parker's suggestion about his writing, about whether his perspective might have value beyond personal processing. He's not convinced, remains skeptical about whether anyone needs or wants to hear from a former Luftwaffe pilot. But he begins organizing his notebooks, editing his observations, shaping the scattered writings into something more coherent. He doesn't live to complete the project. In 1987, at 69 years old, Richter dies of heart failure, sudden and relatively painless. His sister, his only surviving family, handles his estate, discovers the notebooks in his apartment. She reads them with shock, having never known the depth of his wartime trauma, having never understood what he carried silently all those years. She contacts Parker, having found his address among her brother's correspondence. She sends the notebooks, thinking perhaps the British veteran might know what to do with them, whether they have value or should be quietly disposed of. Parker reads Richter's writings carefully, recognizing their importance. They're raw, unpolished, but profoundly honest. They capture something often missing from historical accounts, the interior experience of doubt and guilt, the process of realization that one's cause was unjust, the impossibility of reconciling duty with morality. Parker arranges for publication, working with historians and editors to contextualize Richter's writings without sanitizing them. The book appears in 1989, published modestly, marketed as primary source material rather than commercial memoir. It receives limited attention, small circulation, mostly academic readership. But for those who read it, Richter's account provides valuable perspective. It demonstrates how ordinary men become complicit in evil through gradual compromise, through prioritizing duty over conscience, through accepting propaganda until reality becomes undeniable. It shows the long-term cost of such complicity, the decades of guilt and trauma that follow even when individual actions were legally defensible. It also preserves Richter's observation about Parker, about the British pilot who showed kindness to defeated enemy, who challenged simplistic narratives about warfare and enemies. That brief encounter in 1940 shaped both men's understanding, provided evidence that humanity persists even in warfare's dehumanizing conditions, that individual choices matter even when larger structures are evil. The book's final pages describe Richter's engineering career, his conscious choice of construction over destruction, his attempt to contribute something positive after years of violence. It's not presented as redemption or forgiveness. Richter never forgave himself, never believed his post-war work compensated for wartime killing. But he chose to try anyway, to spend his remaining years building rather than destroying, creating rather than ending. Parker writes an afterword for the book, describing his meeting with Richter in 1940 and their reunion in 1985. He acknowledges the strangeness of their connection, two men who might have killed each other instead becoming linked across decades by brief encounters that challenged their preconceptions. He notes that Richter never claimed his service was justified or his cause honorable, never sought sympathy or understanding. He simply tried to record truth as he experienced it, to document one individual's journey through warfare's moral complexity. The book enters academic circulation, used in university courses examining World War II from personal rather than strategic perspectives. Students read Richter's account alongside Allied testimonies, comparing experiences, recognizing common patterns of trauma and doubt that transcend nationality and allegiance. Years pass. Richter's story becomes one thread in the vast tapestry of World War II memory, neither celebrated nor condemned, simply preserved as evidence of how ordinary people navigated extraordinary circumstances. His notebooks survive in archives, available to researchers, offering perspective that will remain relevant as long as humans try to understand warfare's psychological and moral dimensions. In the end, Hans Richter's war had no glory, no redemption, no satisfying resolution. Just survival, guilt, decades of carrying burdens that never lightened, questions that never found answers. He fought for an evil cause, killed men who didn't deserve death, participated in aggression that destroyed millions. His post-war attempts at positive contribution couldn't erase that history, couldn't balance the moral ledger. But he tried. He survived, he acknowledged his complicity, he spent his remaining years building rather than destroying. He refused easy narratives about duty and honor, rejected attempts to glorify warfare or sanitize his participation in it. He lived with his guilt honestly, without excuse, without redemption. That honesty, that refusal to hide from uncomfortable truth, became his final contribution. Not heroism, not nobility, just documentation of one man's journey through warfare's moral abyss, one record of how easily ordinary people become complicit in evil, one reminder that individual choices matter even when larger structures are corrupt. His war ended in August 1940 when his Messerschmitt crashed into an English field. But the consequences of that war, the trauma and guilt and unanswered questions, those persisted until his death 47 years later. The price of his one day in the sky extended across his entire remaining life, a burden he carried silently, alone, without relief or forgiveness. That was Hans Richter's war. That was his legacy. Not glory, not honor, just honest testimony about the cost of conflict, preserved for future generations who must continue asking the questions Richter asked, continue struggling with the moral complexities he navigated, continue trying to understand how ordinary people become complicit in evil and whether redemption is possible after such complicity. The sky above England remains blue and peaceful, carrying no memory of the battles fought there 80 years ago. The young men who died in those battles, British and German alike, are mostly forgotten except by historians and aging relatives. The causes they fought for have faded into history, their sacrifices reduced to statistics and memorial plaques. But their experiences, preserved in writings like Richter's, continue offering testimony about warfare's true nature. Not the sanitized version presented in propaganda, not the glorified accounts in popular media, but the complex, morally ambiguous, psychologically devastating reality of young men killing each other for causes they imperfectly understand, enduring trauma that extends across lifetimes, searching for meaning in experiences that resist simple interpretation. That testimony remains Richter's gift, his final service, his attempt to ensure that one day in the sky, and all the days that followed, might contribute something to human understanding, might help future generations avoid the mistakes that consumed his generation, might preserve truth against the constant temptation to glorify or forget or sanitize warfare's terrible cost. His story ends not with triumph or tragedy, but with simple persistence. He survived, he witnessed, he recorded, he tried to understand. That's all. That's everything. That's what remains when glory fades and causes collapse and time erases everything except the fundamental human effort to find meaning in suffering and to leave some record of truth for those who follow.